ambient guitar tones have found its way beyond the residencies of post-rock, shoegaze, dream pop, drone music into the world of more popular music such as hip hop, indie rock, indie pop, rap, you name it, even cinematic scores, right? And that's what makes it so cool, because it's one of those areas of guitar tones that has so much versatility and so much room for exploration and experimentation that a lot of sound designers, a lot of guitar players are starting to experiment a lot more with ambient tones and starting to implement a lot of these tones into their daily playing and, you know, in their sessions and everything, really. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you can craft your ambient guitar tone. And I'm going to be demonstrating with my pedalboard, but however, you can pretty much create these tones substituting a lot of the pedals that I am going to be using, or even like plugins on your computer to basically craft this. It will take a little bit more time, obviously, but it is doable. That's, I think, the most important thing to take away. The tools that I have over here are simply a means for me to basically achieve my desired result in a much quicker way. These are things that I can obviously create in the computer as well, because that's pretty much what I've been doing all my life. This pedalboard is fairly new and I'm just starting to explore possibilities with this. But whatever I have been doing in the computer has been translated over into this pedalboard, and that's basically what I'm going to be doing in order to demonstrate today's tone crafting. The first important thing in creating ambient guitar tones is to have a good clean tone. I generally recommend having a clean tone with a lot of headroom, because when you have a lot of headroom, if you stack pedals after pedals after pedals or effects after effects on your DAW, what it does is the headroom that you have allows those pedals to actually do their job without getting squashed by the amp, or without basically turning muddy and without losing clarity. I always personally recommend to have a high headroom amp like Fender amps, or even run Fender amp sims, because they're great pedal platforms and it allows you to stack pedals without them losing clarity. But coming back to the initial point, which is having a good clean tone is important, because a good clean tone is like a blank canvas and it allows you to paint and color any way that you want. And that's exactly what you need as a foundation for your ambient guitar tone. Obviously, you can have coloration. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can always experiment and you can always come up with interesting things. If you're looking for a starting point, then start with a good clean tone, work from there. Over here on my pedal board, I have my compressor, which is my Keeley compressor, going into the Benson Preamp, which is my overdrive pedal, which is going into the Walrus Melee, the beautiful pink pedal, which is a distortion / reverb pedal, which is going into the Walrus Audio Julia, which is a chorus / modulation pedal. From there, it's coming into the Echosystem. From the Echosystem, which the Echosystem is my delay unit. From there, it's going into the Caverns, which is a reverb and delay unit. And from there, it's going into the guitar amp. I personally like, I know in my previous video, I've had a different setup where my delay and reverb was after my amp. But for ambient guitar and pretty much like anything related to it, I like all my effects sort of going into the amp. I just like how it sounds, and that's my personal preference. But once again, feel free to experiment. Today I'm going to be using my PRS Hollow Body SE2, and right now it's connected all the way through the pedal board, but everything is switched off except for my amp sim, and this is what it sounds like with just the amp sim and my guitar. So, straightforward tone, nothing fancy, nothing weird happening to it. So we're going to be using this tone as a basis to create our ambient guitar tone. Well, tones, actually. ambient guitar tone is basically a broad term. And under it, you have so many different ways that you can craft your tones, and they all serve a unique purpose. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is the wash/bed that I like to call. So what it does is basically, it's a soundscape. So you use your guitar and you treat it like a pad/synth, and you use it to generate a soundscape on which you can build like other stuff. The easiest thing to do to to create a soundscape is to use a swell, and you can make swells sound interesting without even using a single effect pedal, like just this. Right, now obviously I can let it sustain a bit more. So that's ambient guitar, believe it or not. And it is obviously the most simplest form, but you see like how just doing a basic swell takes away the attack of your guitar notes and it makes it sound like a pad, right? So that is exactly what we want to achieve when we are trying to create a wash/a bed of soundscape using your guitar. So on top of this, you can start stacking a lot of other effects and make it sound interesting. Like easiest and most obvious one is to have a delay and reverb just running together, and it just turns into something like this. And that just sounds cool right away. I'm using a shimmer reverb, so obviously you can hear that shimmering effect in the back. But you can, if I substitute it with, let's say, some spring reverb, it's a completely different feeling altogether. So, what type of reverb, delay, or modulation you use in creating your swells will drastically change the outcome and the texture of your swell and your soundscape, pretty much everything. Like choosing, so once again, in order to achieve, like, you can obviously, like, get away with a basic spring reverb, basic delay, but just adding a bit of shimmer makes it a lot more interesting. So similarly, you can start incorporating like stuff like, say, reverse delay over here. I've got a nice little reverse delay over here. And then I'm not going to swell in, I'm just going to play a note so that you can hear the reverse delay sort of like working. Or even if you swell it in. Simple but effective. And you can take it a step further by incorporating modulation, such as chorus, into the whole picture as well. And then you can start incorporating something called granular synthesis. So what granular synthesis does is basically it takes your sound, shatters it into tiny little micro loops, and plays them back in an interesting random order. And with granular synthesis, it starts to get extremely interesting, and a basic swell just becomes, I don't know what it becomes, just you just gotta listen to it. And there you go. You have the wash slash bed and just simple swells using a whole bunch of effects to create a soundscape bed. And it just sounds interesting, and it just sounds full of life, and whatever chords you play, whatever chord shapes you play, will basically have a completely different feeling along with these bunch of effects. So hope you enjoyed that one, and we're going to move on to another segment, which is what I like to call the post-rock clean tone. All right, so for this guitar tone, I like to use compression. It just makes it sound fuller and nicer. And this is where you can start to, so this is not a wash. So you're not going to be, all your effects that come in, they're going to basically play a little bit on subtlety. So you're going to use them in subtle ways, because this is where you're going to have elements of ambience in the back, but you're going to also have your notes kind of like pop through, and you want them to be clear and cutting through so that you can tell what notes are being played. So this is the post-rock clean that I like to call. So we're going to engage our compression here, and this is what it sounds like. And we can start to add a little bit of color to all of this. So let's start with a bit of chorus. So we can have some delay. So the delay that I have over here, it's a delay, it's a long delay set for no tap or nothing. This is what I'm using to add a sense of space beyond reverb. So now with reverb coming in, this is what it sounds like. And that's a basic post-rock clean. You can take the chorus off and then you can add a bit of drive. You can control the drive a little bit just to the edge of breakup, and yeah, and it just sounds cool. So you have a lot of clarity, you have reverb, delay, you have all your effects, everything, and you can make this interesting. Obviously, you can take this a step further, like reverse delays, obviously, like, so if you have reverse delays going into it, this is what it sounds like. then you can go a step further and add granular synthesis again. And this is what it's going to sound like. Some drive. So yeah, that was the post-rock clean with a little bit of twist at the end of it there. Like I said, I can go talking about thousands of combinations of effects that you can combine together to get certain sounds, and that's the beauty of ambient guitar tones. Like, you start in one space and you start to incorporate other effects into your effects chain, and it just transforms into something else completely. And that being said, there is very little scope in this video to cover so many combinations. So if you guys want to talk about it, leave your comments down below. I'd be more than happy to engage in a conversation and creating and discovering and even finding out what are your methods of like creating ambient guitar tones. But we're not done yet. We're going to talk about one more guitar tone or ambient guitar style, and this is primarily used in shoegaze sounds, and we're going to talk about shoegaze guitar. What shoegaze guitars are comprised of is heavy distortion, heavy clipping. Ideally fuzz, or you can actually kind of crank your overdrive up to do that as well. But I would generally prefer that you use a fuzz along with a reverb in order to achieve that tone. But for me over here, I have the Walrus Melee, which is what they like to call shoegaze machine. So it is a distortion / reverb built into one. And I'm going to basically demonstrate something really cool with this pedal. But first, I'm going to set everything to kind of like unity, if I may, and then take it from there. I'm going to actually change the decay of the reverb tail to minimal so that it doesn't overwhelm us. So there we go. And this is what shoegaze guitars sound like. And what I like to do is, along with this pedal, I like to stack my overdrive pedal because it allows me to get a little more grit. I can obviously push the drive up on the Melee by just putting the joystick up over here, and it's gonna sound a lot gnarlier. But I like to keep it there and use my overdrive pedal just to get a little more grit, because I kind of set up my overdrive pedal in a way to push a little more top end. So I like to get it from that. As you can see, instantly it just sounds a lot brighter. And you can go crazy with this pedal if you crank the reverb up all the way. So you can have that effect as well. But the point is, this was the kind of sound popularized by shoegaze artists. But yeah. But like I said, I'm using a pedal for this, but you can definitely make this using a fuzz and a reverb pedal. As a matter of fact, I can sort of like demonstrate over here. So I'll turn that off, switch the reverb on, crank the drive up on this pedal. Hold up. So I crank the drive up on the Benson Pre, and this is what it sounds like. And one last thing that I want to talk about shoegaze guitars is the signal chain. Like in the demonstration that I did with the Melee, this is the basically the distortion going into the reverb, but if I change the reverb going into distortion from the signal path, basically, with the reverb going into the distortion now, this is what it sounds like. It just sounds a lot gnarlier and a lot crazier. And this is great for making lead tones in post-rock or shoegaze music. So I can crank the gain down just a little bit, increase the reverb just a bit. And then if I stack it with my delay and reverb over here, crank the reverb up just a bit. There you go, the classic post-rock sound that, you know, we all know and love. And it's just a matter of changing your signal path. So ideally, like thankfully for this pedal I can do that, but you know, ideally what you would have is basically a reverb pedal in front of your distortion pedal, and then that reverb would feed into your distortion, and then it's going to feed the amp, and you're going to get that sound. It's one of my favorite sounds. I've been using this sound for God knows how long. Like that's literally that's the lead line. That's literally the sound that's played on the lead line for Saphira, one of my originals. So hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got to take away something educational and cool from this video. Once again, thank you for watching. Catch you guys later next time.